Now, the second big one that we want to talk about is that customizations, integrations, those complexities that you run into when you do a migration. So in a SharePoint server, pretty straightforward, workflows and things like that. In a, file share, that could be integrations, an ERP system pointing to those files. It could be, one file pointing to another file and more. So we thought we'd talk a little bit more about some of those patterns here.
We took a look at content. Now we're getting into a scenario where there's, custom applications and workflows, info platforms, etc. Just to be mindful, it's not always easy to modernize old applications. So maybe a layer of risk management in mind as you get into taking a look at whether you have a custom web part that needs to move over or what have you. But also at the same time, do stay positive, don't be discouraged. It's absolutely the case that we can rebuild these applications in the cloud without necessarily having a significant effort to it. Again, depends on the application, so you should kind of take a look at each of the important ones that you have, but be cautious but optimistic at the same time. So we may need to rebuild things, but it's not necessarily something that you need to be afraid of. You can totally do it. Common problems when it comes to modernizing solutions for the cloud. So very simply, do you know what the applications are? How familiar are you with them? Do you use them yourself? Who are the owners of that application, etc.? Often there's also a lot of workflows and a lot of forms. So if you're migrating from a SharePoint on-premises scenario, there might be a ton of info path forms. Okay, so something to be cautious of. Solutions could be complex. Data could be coming through from other systems, and there might be dependencies between applications as well. So a couple of callouts, be cautious of those things, but add them to your framework as you're approaching it. Now, when we go back and think about kind of the batches of the migration and how we sequence the work, we should be mindful of which application is influencing which of the batches. Do we need this application live at the same time as the content moves over? Or can we just get the content over first and the application either stays in the current source environment, or we can maybe just not use it for a while and launch it in a few months? There's, again, scenarios might differ, but it influences the sequence of our migration. So we can factor that in to the planning that we're doing.
Yeah, and I think one of the big tricks here is, it's easy to get lost in this concern. And just like before, it's a big project, so planning it out can seem difficult, but when it's broken down into steps, it can make a big difference. The biggest one with solutions is sometimes you don't need to migrate that solution, or to your point, it doesn't need to be tied to that batch or validation or that sequence of cutover. And the more we leave these behind, the more we isolate them from the rest of the migration scope, the more you can realize return on investment where you're benefiting from that other content being consolidated in a modern platform, right? So I think that's the biggest one, is to really untether solutions or these rich integrations from holding back a migration, because you can do it. Remember, the data is still in that source environment. If the data is very, very small and you've removed pretty much everything else, that's still a big win in both security threshold risks and a number of other factors. So that alone is a big indicator for success. And then the other one is that this idea of, when you do this transition, you're learning a lot about the new environment, the new capabilities it has, and often you find that the organization is better able to assess at a later time for organizational business leaders and things like that, whether or not they still need the solution or something else online will work better for them. Because remember, we're doing training, we're helping them, kind of validate their new environments. Is this working for them? Is it meeting their needs? And during that, they're learning about, everything from page assets and web parts to, capabilities and lists and things like that might reduce the need for some of these legacy connections or integrations that they've had before. Let's talk about referential documents, because that's a really big pain point with file shares especially, but other types of migrations as well. Any specific gotchas that you've learned here on your end, Boris?
Yeah, great call out, Richard. So this is definitely one of those in the weeds gotchas. You got all this content you're moving over, there's solutions, it's all complex, but you're getting the handle of it, everything's good. Bam, one more. So in this case, basically what happens, you probably have documents that are linked together, whether that's PDF documents that have a hyperlink to another PDF document. Often this happens with architectural drawings or schematics for products that you're manufacturing. Also Excel files, they're often linked together. So, those links are going to break when you move things to the new environment if you don't take some steps to kind of mitigate that. Luckily, there's out-of-the-box solutions for that. So for instance, Excel helps you kind of map and understand which documents are linked together. There's third-party applications that can help you remap the links as well, and you can put together kind of custom scripts to help automate some of the link changes. So often we'll do something very similar to like a content inventory in these cases, where we understand the source URLs, we understand the destination URLs, and through some scripts or a third-party tool or even some out-of-the-box applications, we can kind of remap that. So when you move the document to your SharePoint Online site, the destination URL is going to be factored into that doc, and you're ready to roll. So we just wanted to squeeze that one in there because it is a gotcha, and just want you to be careful about that as well.